Following is an interview with Stanley Elkin conducted by Lynn Ballard for the American Audio Prose Library in January of 1981 in the studios of radio station KOPN in Columbia, Missouri.
Your stories and novels are filled with great talkers. I love them. Characters who pour out all their thoughts and their frustrations and with long speeches and tales and anecdotes, a lot of wordplay. I like it when Ben Flesh gives his Benny in the Bucket speech to this crowd of New Yorkers who are standing there very patiently listening to this long harangue while even he's wondering why he can't stop. I'm wondering, is there any of Stanley Elkin in this kind of compulsive talking?
Well, yes. I am a compulsive talker. I am what is known in the trade as a loudmouth. But my father told stories, and I used to listen to them. I don't write the stories that he told. I can't even remember the stories he told, but he was a very entertaining man, and a very eloquent and articulate one.
Your father telling stories, that seems to be a common denominator of many writers. Do you think that's part of what made you a writer, having lots of stories available to you as a child?
Well, these were anecdotes rather than, tales of the deep woods or anything like that. He was a traveling salesman and sold costume jewelry and was on the road about 6 months out of every year. And so when he came back, he wouldn't be telling the stories to me necessarily, telling his friends and our friends. I would just listen.
Your father was.
But I don't think it's what made me a writer.
What do you think made you a writer?
It's really the only thing I know how to do.
When did you know you could do it, though?
No writer ever knows that he can do it. I mean, I've published about 8 or 9 books now, and I'm still not sure I can do it. But it's certainly what I want to do, and it's, I think, the thing I do best.
Now, when I think of Stanley Elkin, I think of a successful writer. You've had your books published, and your name is known, you're being taught in the universities. Do you think of yourself as successful?
Well, I have a literary reputation. I wish that my books sold more copies. But I suppose every writer wishes his books sold more copies.
One of the things I'd like to know about, we're talking about writing as a profession. Somehow, as a professional writer, you've managed to write very well about other kinds of trades. I'm thinking of the bail bondsman. You show a lot of knowledge of the details of
I know nothing
bonding.
about the bail bond industry. I was reading, who's the columnist for? Oh, Mike Royko. I was reading Mike Royko's book about the mayor of Chicago, Boss. And I saw the word bail bondsman. There was a tavern in Chicago where a lot of the cops, detectives, and bondsmen hung out. Now, of course, I knew that bail bondsmen existed, but something about, the word just stuck out on the page and scared me. I remember once when I was a little kid listening to Jolly Joe Kelly telling a story over the radio about a spy, and I had never heard the word spy before, and I wasn't sure what a spy was. And that word terrified me, and I went deep, deep under the blankets. At any rate, when I saw the word bail bondsman, I thought, hey, that would be a nifty industry to write about, since most of my novels or novellas begin really with vocations. But I didn't know anything about bondsmen, and I mentioned this to a lawyer friend of mine, also a novelist, Albert Lebowitz, and he said, well, he knew bondsmen, and he tried to get me in touch with one. But no bondsman was willing to talk to me when he found out that I wanted to write about him. So I was off that year. It was 71, 72, and we were living in London. And a friend of mine, Howard Nemiroff, sent me a clipping from the Wall Street Journal. And the clipping was about a bondsman in Indianapolis. And it detailed, certain aspects of the job, things that went with the territory, and that was really all the research that I did.
Your father, you said, was a salesman.
Research is so much trouble. It really is. Particularly if you're as lazy as I am. Right now in the novel I'm working on, George Mills, the chapter that I'm almost finished with, it's about the Ottoman Empire in 1825, and specifically about the Janissaries. The Janissaries were an elite corps. Now, I had simply, again, seen them alluded to. I knew the word. I didn't know quite what they were. Seen them alluded to in print. And I thought, hey, that'd be nifty to write a chapter that took my character into Turkey and, as a matter of fact, took him into the Janissary Corps. So I started looking things up in Encyclopedia Britannica, and got some sort of broad stroke outlines, but all the detail work was just too much for me. So I've written the chapter making up, 95% of this. Hopefully it gives at least the illusion of authenticity.
I got the illusion of authenticity in the bail bondsman, in the franchiser. I'm wondering about the fascination you show with marketing, salesmanship, those things. You said your father was a salesman. Yes. And particularly, there's the beautiful section in A Bad Man with Isidore Feldman and his son as peddlers in southern Illinois. I know your father was not that type of salesman, but do you feel that there's something autobiographical in that chapter?
Yes, but my father was that type of salesman. He could sell you the microphones in this room, even though they didn't belong to him. No, he was very good. And in a kind of way, for a salesman's son, I'm a dopey shopper. I don't like to be taken. No one likes to be taken. But it doesn't hurt as much when the guy, is conning you with some grace and facility. And that I kind of enjoy.
You say you don't like to be taken. Something that I thought of when I was reading The Living End and some of your other works is this notion of man as sucker, getting suckered in by someone else who has something to sell. And if there's anything Americans...
It would be man as salesman, not man as sucker. It seems to me that all dialogue, and this isn't, I say it seems to me as though I think about this 92 hours a day, and I don't think I've thought about it for 4.5 minutes all of my life. But it seems to me that all dialogue is necessarily confrontation. And one of the great classical confrontations is the negotiation, when people are negotiating with each other. And so in a real way, I think, a lot of the pitches in the work have more to do with the essence of what dialogue is, trying to convince somebody that he needs something, either done for him or to him. And it has to do with the fact that my father was a salesman.
When Ellerby gets to heaven, he's in ecstasy that he's finally made it, like it's all paid off finally. And St. Peter looks at him and says, go to hell. And he does, literally. The feeling there is not so much of despair at ending up in the wrong place, but of being tricked into having lived the wrong way.
That's right.
Is there something about the way we live that you're trying to project?
Oh, when you start dragging in we, us, ourselves, the French, my eyes spin. I have nothing to say that is going to improve anybody's life. You asked me, what made me a writer, and I said evasively, it's the thing I do best. If I could blow a trumpet, I would blow a trumpet, blah, blah, blah. But I guess what I'm really trying to say is that the only thing I want my writing to do, or to be, is perfect. And if I can get a line right, if I can name something properly, it's like adding to knowledge. I mean, if my metaphor is good enough, that seems to me like the naming day in Eden, I suppose, but like a kind of science. It's a kind of scientific work. It's like the geologists naming rocks, strata.
And yet you're almost an archaeologist of our culture. You observe it so acutely.
No, it's
the
all around us,
content.
our culture. I mean, our culture refuses to sit still. You don't have to pick up rocks to see it. All you have to do is look out the window.
But you seem to see it so much more acutely than many of us do. I can drive down a highway or a city street.
I only
and
see it when I'm working. I really do. I see no more, no less, hopefully no less, than other people. But when I'm working, I am specifically looking very closely at something. For example, I no longer do this, but I used to work in a Carolyn library at Washington University. And when I was writing The Franchiser, there was a chapter where I was describing the kinds of clothes that men wear on airplanes. So I went out and I got myself catalogs, J.C. Penney catalogs, Sears catalogs, and just looked very, very closely at the pictures in those catalogs to get the articles of clothing right. And in a kind of way, that's cheating. I mean, that's looking at the culture with a kind of magnifying glass, I suppose. But I normally wouldn't see that. I mean, the act of writing is an act of overreaching. I mean, it's an act of really being on one's toes and concentrating and paying very close attention. You don't do that during all your waking hours, or you'd go blind.